These are the lands of the Pyime, the rich black earth that has nourished civilizations for millennia. For generations, these fields were a promise of abundance, the breadbasket of Europe, swaying not just with wheat, but with the rhythms of life itself. Here, the songs of harvest festivals echoed under vast, peaceful skies, and the future felt as open and endless as the horizon. It was a land defined by its bounty, its folklore woven into the very soil, a place where the cycle of seasons promised a future of growth and tranquility. But that peace was a fragile veneer. In the early hours of a cold February morning, that ancient rhythm was shattered. The song of the lark was silenced, replaced by the guttural roar of engines, the piercing shriek of air raid sirens, and the percussive, earth-shaking thunder of artillery. The sky, once a canvas of blue and gold, became a theatre of fire and smoke. The familiar hum of daily life was violently erased, supplanted by a soundtrack of destruction that would soon become the nation's grim reality. This is Ukraine, a nation whose name, borderland, belies a deep and ancient heart. For centuries, it has existed at the crossroads of empires, a prize to be fought over, its culture and language often suppressed, yet stubbornly, miraculously enduring. This is not a new fight, but the latest, most brutal chapter in a long, arduous struggle for self-determination. The fight is for more than just territory. It is a fight for the right to speak their own language, to honor their own heroes, to write their own history, and to chart their own course in the family of nations. It is a battle for the very soul of a people, a defiant stand for an identity forged in poetry, resilience, and an unyielding love for freedom. From the vantage point of a drone, the landscape now tells a story of profound trauma. The neat geometry of farmlands is pockmarked with craters like wounds in the earth. Towns and villages, once bustling with life, now stand as skeletal remains, their homes hollowed out, their schools and hospitals turned to rubble. The architecture of daily life has been systematically dismantled, leaving behind a ghost-like geography of loss. But the deepest scars are not the ones visible from the sky. They are etched into the lives of millions. This is a catastrophe measured in packed train stations and tearful goodbyes, in basements turned bomb shelters, in the faces of children who have learned the vocabulary of war before they have learned to read. It is the story of doctors performing surgery by flashlight, of farmers clearing their fields of unexploded ordnance, of ordinary people forced to make extraordinary choices in the face of unimaginable horror. The political tensions that simmered for years did not just boil over, they exploded, unleashing a wave of human suffering on a scale not seen in Europe for generations. The world watched as a sovereign nation was invaded, its people targeted, and the foundations of international order were shaken to their core. This conflict, born in the halls of power, is now being paid for with the lives and futures of everyday Ukrainians, a stark reminder that the decisions of the few can bring devastation to the many. What began as a violation of borders has become a war on existence itself, a struggle that reverberates far beyond these scarred fields, challenging the world to confront the true cost of tyranny and the enduring price of freedom. In the pre-dawn stillness of February 24, 2022, Ukraine slept under a fragile blanket of peace. It was a peace that had been fraying for 8 long years, ever since the 2014 annexation of Crimea and the eruption of conflict in the Donbas. But for millions, it was still peace. Life, with its daily routines and future plans, continued. In the capital, Kiev, and in cities across the nation, the quiet of the night held no hint of the storm about to break. This was the final moment of an era, a world that would cease to exist by sunrise. Then the invasion began. From the north, east, and south, Russian forces crossed the border in a multi-pronged assault. This wasn't a border skirmish, it was a full-scale invasion, a thunderous declaration of intent broadcast to a stunned world. The movement shattered not just decades of uneasy post-Soviet peace, but the very foundation of international law and the principle of national sovereignty. For Ukraine, a nation that had fought for centuries to define its own identity and path, this was a brutal attempt to drag it back into the shadows of an empire it had long since left behind. Within hours, the war was no longer a distant threat at the border. It was a terrifying reality in the heart of the country. The air raid sirens, a sound unheard by generations, wailed through the streets. Missiles struck Kyiv, Kharkiv, Mariupol, Odessa, cities whose names would soon become synonymous with both tragedy and defiance. The initial barrage targeted military installations and airfields, a clear attempt at a swift, decapitating strike. But rockets also slammed into civilian neighborhoods, turning homes into tombs and playgrounds into craters. The Kremlin's strategy was clear: shock and awe, designed to cripple Ukraine's will to resist before it could even begin. Families awoke not to alarm clocks, but to the percussive boom of explosions. The mundane reality of yesterday was gone, replaced by a primal, urgent need for survival. A frantic calculus began in every home: what to pack, where to go, who to call. Life was suddenly condensed into a single backpack. Across the country, highways heading west became parking lots of desperation, filled with families fleeing the unknown. At train stations, scenes of heart-wrenching chaos unfolded as thousands crammed onto any available carriage, saying goodbyes that felt terrifyingly final. For those who stayed, life moved underground. The grand, ornate metro stations of Kyiv and Kharkiv, symbols of civic pride, transformed into vast, subterranean shelters. Strangers became neighbors, sharing food, water, and whispered words of encouragement in the echoing darkness. Parents tried to create a bubble of normalcy for their children, reading stories and playing games while the world above them shook. In these cold, concrete depths, amidst the fear and uncertainty, the first sparks of a powerful collective resilience began to glow. And the world watched. On screens everywhere, the unthinkable was happening in real time. News channels broadcast non-stop coverage, while social media became a raw, unfiltered front line, with ordinary Ukrainians posting videos of encroaching tanks and missile strikes from their apartment windows. A wave of shock and condemnation swept across the globe. Spontaneous protests erupted from Tokyo to New York. Landmarks were bathed in the blue and yellow of the Ukrainian flag. But as statements were issued and sanctions were debated, a single urgent question hung in the balance. Could a nation's fierce will to be free withstand the brute force of a superpower? The first day of the war was over, but the fight for Ukraine and for the future of a world order had just begun. Why did this happen? Some say it was about territory, others about history, power and fear. Russia sought influence, Ukraine sought independence and democracy. Caught between East and West, Ukraine became the battlefield of ideologies. But in war, it is not politics that bleed, it is people. Millions fled their homes, mothers carrying children across frozen borders. Fathers stayed behind to fight. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. Yet in the ashes of destruction, courage endured. Volunteers risking their lives to save strangers. Every face tells a story of loss, of love, of unyielding spirit. On the front lines, ordinary citizens became defenders. Teachers, farmers, engineers, now soldiers of necessity. They fight not for conquest, but for existence. Their message to the world is clear: we will not surrender our home. And as the smoke rises, so does their determination. The world responded, some with weapons, others with words. Sanctions struck economies. Energy crises rippled across continents. But diplomacy faltered and peace remained distant. In the background, ordinary citizens everywhere wondered, how did we come to this? Amid the chaos, hope survives. In small villages, volunteers rebuild shattered schools. In hospitals, doctors work through the night, saving lives with dwindling supplies. Even under bombardment, music, laughter, and love persist. humanity refuses to be silenced. The echoes of the first explosions did more than just shatter the morning calm of Kyiv. They fractured the very foundation of the post-Cold War era. This war has irrevocably changed the world. It redrew the lines of global alliances, sending shockwaves through economies and energy markets, reminding a generation that had grown comfortable with peace just how fragile it truly is. The conflict became a stark, brutal lesson in the enduring realities of power, sovereignty, and the human cost of ambition. But in the shadow of this aggression, something remarkable and unexpected began to stir. The conflict, in its brutality, also became a powerful catalyst, revealing a profound and deeply human capacity for unity that many feared was lost to cynicism and division. We have witnessed the anatomy of courage dissected and displayed for the world to see. It's in the unyielding resolve of the soldier on the front line, holding a position against impossible odds. It's in the quiet determination of the farmer, clearing their fields of mines to plant the next harvest, an act of faith in the future. It's in the teacher, holding class in a subway station, nurturing young minds amidst the chaos, refusing to let a generation's future be stolen. These are not tales of superheroes, but of ordinary people who, when faced with the unthinkable, chose to become extraordinary. Their resilience is a testament not just to a nation's spirit, but to the very essence of what it means to fight for one's home, one's history, and one's identity. This strength is not born of this moment alone. It is drawn from a deep historical wellspring of resistance. For centuries, Ukraine has fought to preserve its culture and language against forces that sought to erase it. From the Cossack spirit of freedom to the intellectual defiance of the executed Renaissance, from the struggle for independence to the Orange Revolution and the revolution of dignity, the narrative of Ukraine is one of perpetual self-defense and self-definition. This war is but the latest, most brutal chapter in that long story. The enemy sought to break a nation, but they misunderstood. They were not attacking a government or an army. They were attacking a memory, a song, a language, a soul. And a soul forged in the fires of history does not break so easily. And the world, for the most part, did not look away. From every corner of the planet, voices rose. They rose in the grand halls of international diplomacy, in resolutions and sanctions, a global chorus of condemnation. But more importantly, they rose in the streets, in Tokyo, in London, in Buenos Aires, in Sydney. People who couldn't point to Ukraine on a map a month prior were now marching for its freedom. This wave of solidarity manifested in countless acts of compassion, families opening their homes, volunteers driving thousands of miles with aid, and children donating their pocket money. It was a powerful decentralized movement of global citizenship, a recognition that the fight for Kyiv was also a fight for the principles of freedom everywhere. As the sun rises over the fields and cities of Ukraine, it illuminates both the scale of the devastation and the tenacity of the human spirit. The question that hangs in the air is no longer just about military strategy or territorial gains. It is a question posed to all of humanity, not how long this war will last, but how soon we will learn its most vital lessons. Lessons about the poison of imperialism, the danger of apathy, and the absolute necessity of standing for our values before it's too late. Will we build a world where might no longer makes right, where sovereignty is sacred, and where dialogue triumphs over destruction? The cost has been immeasurable, a debt of sorrow that will be paid by generations. Yet even in the darkest night of grief and loss, the light of hope still burns. It burns in the quiet vigils held across the world. It burns in the defiant art that blossoms from the rubble. It burns in the simple, profound act of a neighbor helping a neighbor clear debris. This hope is not a passive wish for a better tomorrow. It is an active, defiant force. It is the fuel for reconstruction, the blueprint for justice, and the promise that the sacrifices made will not be in vain. And one day, from the ruins, from the ashes of this terrible war, Ukraine will stand tall again. It will not be the same nation it was before, for it has been tempered by fire and loss. It will be stronger, more unified, its identity more sharply defined than ever before. The rebuilding will be more than just bricks and mortar. It will be the reconstruction of dreams, the healing of a national trauma, and the reaffirmation of its European destiny. Free, proud, and unbroken,